Dann starte ich das Spiel.
Ach, dann sollte ich Twitch starten.
Dann solltest du Twitch starten. Ich habe Twitch auch gestartet. Ich muss nur noch auf den Kanal. Aber erst möchte ich eben meinen Teebeutel ausdrücken. Ich habe leider kein cooles Teebeutel-Ausdrückgerät für 15 Euro. Ich mache das Bändchen vom Teebeutel. Ich glaube, ich sehe was. Das ist gut. Ein Game-Mato. Das war das richtige Spiel. Resolved to leave England for the Cape, Hannah's outlook changes as a mysterious visitor drops by. An unlikely visit. Nicht visit. You're a visit, Harry.
Hast du ihn besucht, den Harry? Stand auch schon mal besser an der Stelle.
Dann gehen wir wieder in unser Haus. Wohnung.
Hey, can I speak to you? May I come in for a minute?
I recognized him as the occupant of a flat on the top floor with whom I had passed the time of day on the stairs. He was slim with a short brown beard and small gimlety blue eyes. Was ist gimlety? Das habe ich noch nie gehört.
Ist das sowas wie Schimmern?
Vielleicht. His hand was pawing at my arm. I motioned him in. I motioned him in. Das ist... Jetzt muss man wieder dieses Türöffnen-Minispiel machen. No sooner was he over the threshold than he made a dash for my back room where I used to...
Beweglichkeit,
Okay.
sagt Google.
Vielleicht unruhig dann in dem Zusammenhang?
Ja, kann sein.
I used to smoke and write my letters. Then he bolted back.
Is the door locked?
Ich meine, er ist ja ganz offensichtlich nervös.
Ja. Nicht zu sagen, sehr panisch. Wir haben da nichts gemacht, außer ein bisschen Zeitung gelesen, oder?
Mhm.
Was ist passiert? He filled himself a stiff whiskey and soda and drank it over 3 gulps. I sat down in an armchair and lit my pipe. I was pretty certain that I had to deal with a madman.
I'm very sorry. It's a mighty liberty, but you look like the kind of man who would understand. I've had you in my mind all this week when things got troublesome. Say, will you do me a good turn?
I'll listen to you. That's all I'll promise.
Pardon. I'm a bit rattled tonight. You see, I happen at this moment to be dead.
What does it feel like?
A smile flickered over his drawn face.
I'm not mad. Yet. Say, sir, I've been watching you, and I reckon you're a cool customer. I reckon, too, you're an honest man and not afraid of playing a bold hand. I'm gonna confide in you. I need help worse than any man ever needed it. I want to know if I can count you in.
Guten Abend. Hallo.
Hi.
Guten Abend nur vorgelesen.
Get on with your yarn and I'll tell you.
queerest rigmarole. Franklin P. Scudder was an American from Kentucky. After college, being pretty well off, he started out to see the world.
Süß.
Schon. He wrote a bit and acted as a war correspondent for the Chicago paper. Tensions in the Near East! Balkan affairs test Europe. He had played about with politics, at first for interest, then because he couldn't help himself. Then he made his discovery. Er hat den Zug gegen ein Auto getauscht.
Das ist niedlich.
Mhm. Away behind all the governments and the armies, there was a big subterranean movement going on, engineered by some very dangerous people. Subterranean. The sort of educated anarchists that make revolutions. And behind them were financiers who were playing for money. They wanted Russia and Germany at loggerheads. Everything would be in the melting pot. The anarchists looked to see a new world emerge, while the capitalists would make fortunes by buying up wreckage. And Scudder had himself convinced that Jewish men were behind it all.
On the 15th day of June, Constantine Karolides is coming to this city. The British Foreign Office has taken to having international tea parties, and the biggest of them is due on that date. Now, Karolides is reckoned the principal guest, and if my friends have their way, he will never return to his admiring countrymen.
I set up for that, for I had been reading about Karolides that very afternoon. Ja, das hatten wir.
Well, that's simple enough anyhow. You can warn him and keep him at home.
And play their game. If he does not come, they win, for he's the only man that can straighten out the tangle. And if his government are warned, he won't come, for he does not know how big the stakes will be on June the 15th.
I was beginning to get interested in the beggar.
What about the British government? They're not going to let their guests be murdered. Tip them the wink, and they'll take extra precautions.
No good. They might stuff your city with plainclothes detectives and double the police. And Constantine would still be a doomed man. He'll be murdered by an Austrian, and there'll be plenty of evidence to show the connivance of the big folk in Vienna and Berlin. It will all be an infernal lie, of course, but the case will look black enough to the world. But it's not gonna come off if there's a certain man alive, right here in London on the 15th day of June. And that man is gonna be your servant, Franklin P. Scudder.
Collected Scudder. I was getting to like the little chap. His jaw had shut like a rat trap, and there was the fire of battle in his gimlety eyes.
Where did you find out this story?
I completed my evidence 10 days ago in Paris. I can't tell you the details now, for it's something of a history. But when I was quite sure in my own mind, I judged it my business to disappear. And I reached this city by a mighty queer circuit. Till yesterday, I thought I had muddied my trail some, and was feeling pretty happy. Then...
The recollection seemed to upset him. He gulped down some more whiskey.
Then I saw a man standing in the street outside this block. I used to stay close in my room all day, and only slip out after dark for an hour or two. I watched him for a bit from my window. I thought I recognized him. He came in and spoke to the porter. When I came back from my walk last night, I found a card in my letterbox. It bore the name of the man I want least to meet on God's earth.
I think that the look in my companion's eyes, the sheer naked scare on his face, completed my conviction of his honesty.
What did you do next?
I realized I was bottled as sure as a pickled herring, and that there was only one way out. I had to die. If my pursuers knew I was dead, they would go to sleep again.
How did you manage it?
How Scudder died. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, Step 4 and Step 5.
Wie fangen wir an?
I told the man who wells me that I was feeling pretty bad and got myself up to look like death. That wasn't difficult, for I'm no slouch at disguises. Step 1, convince Porter illness requires disguise. Make up clay. Too much? Rip gone? Have run out of clay. Then I got a corpse. You can always get a body in London if you know where to go for it. I fetched it back in a trunk on the top of a four-wheeler, and I had to be assisted upstairs to my room. I had. Find a corpse, graveyard, Highgate Cemetery, transports. They are so helpful. Cabby, carriage. I had to pile up evidence from the inquest, so I went to bed and got my man to mix me a sleeping draught. And then I told him to clear out. He wanted to fetch me a doctor, but I swore some and said I couldn't abide leeches. There will be an inquest. Need to supply evidence. Feign death? Sleeping draught. Who to administer? When I was left alone, I started to fake up that corpse. He was my size, and I judged he had perished from too much alcohol, so I put some spirits about the place. The jaw was the weak point in the likeness, so I blew it away with the revolver. I dare say that there will be somebody to swear having heard a shot, but there are no neighbors on my floor, and I guessed I could risk it. This jaw is a problem. My options are limited. A gun will make one loud bang, danke. Neighbors, not a great deal of choice. Aber was für einen schönen Revolver er dahin gemalt hat.
Sehr talentiert.
Yeah. I left the body in bed, dressed up in my pajamas and a revolver lying on the bedcloth and a considerable mess around. Then I got into a suit of clothes I had kept waiting for emergencies. I didn't dare shave for fear of leaving tracks, and besides, it wasn't any kind of use my trying to get into the streets. Final checklist: dress body, place revolver, change, leave no trace.
Aha. Ein interessanter Plan.
Ja.
Sehr gut durchdacht.
Und das alles in einer relativ kurzen Zeit.
I had you in my mind all day, and there seemed nothing to do but to make an appeal to you. I watched from my window till I saw you come home, and then slipped down the stair to meet you.
He sat blinking like an owl, fluttering with nerves and desperately determined.
There, sir. I guess you know about as much as me of this business.
Jetzt haben wir Whisky eingeschüttet. I was now pretty well convinced that he was going straight with me. It was the wildest sort of narrative, but I had heard it in my time many steep tales which had turned out to be true. And if he had wanted to get a location in my flat and then cut my throat, he would have pitched a milder yarn. Milder yarn.
Hand me your key, and I'll take a look at the corpse. Excuse my caution, but I'm bound to verify a bit if I can.
I reckon you'd ask for that. But I haven't got it. It's on my chain on the dressing table. I had to leave it behind, for I couldn't leave any clues to breed suspicions. The gentry who are after me are pretty bright-eyed citizens. You'll have to take me on trust for the night, and tomorrow you'll get the proof of the corpse business right enough.
I thought for an instant or two.
Right. I'll trust you for the night. I'll lock you into this room and keep the key. Just one word, Mr. Scudder. I believe you're straight. But if so be you are not, I should warn you that I'm a handy man with a gun.
I haven't the privilege of your name, sir, but let me tell you that you're a true gentleman. Now, I'll thank you to lend me a razor.
I took him to my bedroom and turned him loose. In half an hour's time, a figure came out that I scarcely recognized.
My hat, Mr. Scudder.
A new man. Differences, similarities. Only his gimlety, hungry eyes were the same. He was the very model, even to the brown complexion, of some British officer who had had a long spell in India. He was shaved clean, his hair was parted in the middle, and he had cut his eyebrows.
Not Mr. Scudder. Captain Theophilus Digby of the 40th Gurkhas. Presently home on leave. I'll thank you to remember that, sir.
Gleich noch einen aristokratischen Akzent angelegt.
Ah.
I made him up a bed in the smoking room and thought my own couch more cheerful than I had been for the past month. Things did happen occasionally, even in this god-forgotten metropolis. Eine neue Errungenschaft. Das war das Kapitel.
Das ging fix.
Yeah. Deeper into this mess, Scudder has confided in Hannay, but he is not out of danger. Officially dead, he must now lie low. Mai 1940 bei uns zu Hause.
Bei uns zu Hause.
Wir haben das Haus noch nicht verlassen seit den letzten Vorfällen.
Stop that row, Paddock. There's a friend of mine, Captain... he's dossing down in there. Get breakfast for 2, and then come and speak to me.
Captain.
Wie hieß er noch gleich?
Character acquaintance. He had about as much gift of a gap as a hippopotamus, and was not a great hand at valeting, but I knew I could count on his loyalty. Paddock was a diener? Paddock was a fellow I had done a good turn to out on this Selakvi, and I had inspanned him as my servant as soon as I got to England. Inspanned him? Er benutzt so gehobene Wörter, wo man einen Moment überlegen muss, was er meint.
Ja. Wie sich das gehört.
I told Paddock a fine story about how my friend was a great swell, but with his nerves pretty bad from overwork, who wanted absolute rest and stillness. Nobody had gotten to know he was here, or he would be besieged by communications from the India office, and the Prime Minister and his cure would be ruined. And I am bound to say Skada played up splendidly when he came to breakfast.
War das nicht andere Richtung drehen?
Hab ich.
Okay.
He fixed Paddock with his eyeglass, just like a British officer, asked him about the Boer War, and slung out at me a lot of stuff about imaginary pals. Paddock couldn't learn to call me sir, but he sought Skada as if his life depended on it. He left him with a newspaper and a box of cigars and headed out to Alexandra Park race her course. When I got back, the liftman had an important face.
Nasty business here this morning, sir. Gent in number 15 been and shot himself. I just took him to the mortuary. The police are up there now.
Dann fahren wir mal in den 5. Stock. I ascended to number 15 and found a couple of bobbies and an inspector busy making an examination. I asked a few idiotic questions and they soon kicked me out. I attended the inquest the next day. The jury found it a case of suicide while of unsound mind. I gave Skada a full account of the affair, and it interested him greatly. He said he wished he could have attended, for he reckoned it would be about as spicy as to read one's own obituary notice. Das ist eine Todesanzeige.
Keine Ahnung.
Das ist schon das 3. Wort heute, was ich noch nie gehört habe. Und bis jetzt konnte ich eigentlich nur bei einem aus dem Zusammenhang erraten, was es ist. Und ich habe schon wieder vergessen, wie das Wort hieß.
Nachruf.
Ja, Todesanzeige.
Ja. Ich lasse Google einfach mal auf. Aber es ist geil, wie das gesprochen wird.
Obituary. Okay.
So sie dir notiert, um sie nachzuschlagen. Haben wir schon.
Matt schlägt sie direkt nach. Skada was very peaceful the first 2 days he stayed with me.
Ich meine, außer das eine, wo du gesagt hast, du kannst dir das herleiten.
Ja, das ergab sich aus dem Sinn.
Ja.
He read and smoked a bit and made a heap of jottings in a notebook, and every night we had a game of chess at which he beat me hollow. But on the 3rd day I could see he was beginning to get restless. He fixed up a list of days and started making remarks against them. Ich finde es übrigens ganz cool, dass sie dieses Klettern quasi drinne haben. He started listening for little noises and was always asking me if Paddock could be trusted. Once or twice he got very peevish and apologized for it. I didn't blame him. I made every allowance, for he had taken on a fairly stiff job. And then one night he was very solemn.
Say, Hanny,
What is it?
Judge, I should let you a bit deeper into this business. I should hate to go out without leaving somebody else to put up a fight.
He began to tell me in detail what I had only heard from him vaguely. I did not give him very close attention. The fact is, I was more interested in his own adventures than in his high politics. The plot thickens. I reckon that Carolides and his affairs were not my business, so a lot of that Skada said slipped clean off my memory. It was very clear that the danger to Carolides would not begin till he had got to London and would come from the very highest quarters, where there would be no thought of suspicion. He mentioned the name of a woman, Julia Chenyi, as having something to do with the danger. She would be the decoy, I gathered, to get Karolides out of the care of his guards. He talked about a black stone and a man that lisped his speech, and he described very particularly somebody that he never referred to without a shudder, an old man who could hood his eyes like a hawk.
Mm-hmm.
He remained solemn for the rest of the evening and spoke a good deal about death.
I reckon it's like going to sleep when you're pretty well tired out. Awaking to find a summer day with the scent of hay coming in at the window. I used to thank God for such mornings way back in the bluegrass country. And I guess I'll thank him when I wake up on the other side of Jordan.
The next day he was much more cheerful and read the life of Stonewall Jackson much of the time, but the rest of London celebrated Empire Day. I went out to dinner with a mining engineer whom I had to see on business, and came back in time for our game of chess before turning in. Findet ihr das Tür-Minispiel? Ja. Blum, blum. Der Soundeffekt ist schon irgendwie dumm. Oh.
God. Scudder.
Ich glaube, er ist tot.
Das kann gut sein, ja.
The murder of the American spy suggests he wasn't talking hot air. But everything points to Hannay as the killer. In the soup. 23. Mai 1914, bei uns zu Hause. Aber ein interessantes Messer.
Absolut. War ein Geräusch im
Ja, das
Hintergrund.
habe ich gehört. The poor staring white face was more than I could bear. Ah,
Speicher vor? Nee. E-Mail.
ich habe vergessen, das E-Mail-Programm zuzumachen. Okay, tut mir leid. Ich hatte auch befürchtet, dass es der Speicher war, sonst hätte ich nicht geguckt.
Ich meine, wenn es der Speicher ist, ist es ja nicht schlimm. Den ersten Teil habe ich runtergeladen.
Das ist gut. I staggered to a cupboard, found the brandy and swallowed several mouthfuls. I'd seen men die violently before. Indeed, I'd killed a few myself in the Matabele War, but this cold-blooded indoor business was different. I needed to think. Brutal slaying. The body. His enemies had found him and had taken the best way to make certain of his silence. Scudder had been in my rooms for 4 days, and his enemies must have reckoned that he had confided in me, so I would be next to go. Might be that very night or the next day or the day after, but my number was up all right. Da so eine komischen Notizen, die man irgendwie nicht lesen kann. Bis zum 15. Juni, wenn Teegesellschaft ist. Supposing I went out now and called in the police, or went to bed and let Paddock find the body and call them in the morning. What kind of a story was I to tell about Scudder? The odds were 1,000 to 1 that I would be charged with a murder, and the circumstantial evidence was strong enough to hang me. Few people knew me in England. I had no real pal who could come forward and swear to my character. Perhaps that was what those secret enemies were playing for. They were clever enough for anything, and an English prison was a good way of getting rid of me till after June 15th as a knife in my chest. As good. If I told the whole story, and by any miracle was believed, I would be playing their game. Karolides would stay at home, which was what they wanted. I'm an ordinary sort of fellow, not braver than any other people, but I hate to see a good man downed, and that long knife would not be in the end of Scudder if I play the game in his place. Das Messer ist voll strange.
Ja. Es hat auf jeden Fall eine sehr interessante Form.
Someone must have been searching for something, perhaps for the pocketbook. The knife had pinned Scudder to the floor. Wir haben es eingesammelt, aber was steckt da noch? Karolides comes to London. Greek Premier pushes for Balkan resolve. Greek Premier Konstantin Karolides is to attend London next month to discuss his recent call for a new international conference to resolve the ongoing tensions in the Balkans. Sir Walter Bullivant, permanent secretary of the Foreign Office, told his newspaper that Karolides' visit is part of a new strategy to secure peace in the embattled region. Securing stability in the Balkan and managing the claims of the various new states and peoples of the region is crucial to our relations with the great powers. I have absolute confidence that Karolides is the man to chair any such conference. American agent suicide by gunshot. Suicide coroner's inquest. So. The circumstances attending the death of Christopher Rigg, 29, of Wimpole Street, Paddington, formed the subject of an inquest held at Southwark Coroner's Court before Mr. T.F. Parsons on Wednesday this week. The deceased, an American businessman, was discovered in his affluent fifth-floor apartment by his valet on the morning of Tuesday, 19th of May. Mr. Rigg was known by few in the apartment block, with the neighbors describing him as a quiet man who kept himself to himself. Little is known of the American's business affairs aside from his brief encounter with Turnabout Publishing, with which he had brought an array of pulpwood propositions. It is suspected that Mr. Rigg was not meeting his targets and was in financial difficulties. On the evening of Rick's death, he had been behaving out of character. The valet spoke, describing him as looking like death, with worries obviously playing on his mind. Before retiring for the night, Rick had his valet mix a sleep draught before dismissing him. It is understood that Rick was adamant that he did not wish to see a doctor, so the valet did not send for professional medical attention. A large trunk was found empty in the fifth-floor apartment. However, the liftman of the Wimpole Street residence said that it had had a considerable weight when he helped the deceased take it up to his room. Owing to the various empty bottles of hard liquor about the apartment, potentially the contents of the trunk, it is clear that Rick drank excessively before taking the revolver and shooting himself in the head, severely disfiguring the lower half of his face. The revolver was found on the bedcloth next to the body. No reports of a gunshot were noted in the evening of the death. Rick's was the only apartment on the 5th floor, and on the level below, occupants Mr. and Mrs. Joe Twiston were out for the evening. The jury returned the verdict of suicide while of unsound mind. With no identifiable next of kin, the deceased's possessions have been handed over to the American consul. Nehmen wir ein Messer.
Und ein paar Münzen.
Ja. Was will er da noch von mir? Ich sehe nicht was.
Vielleicht zeigt er das nur noch an, weil da fehlt dir nur noch ein Nupsi.
Ja, mir fehlt. Ah, das Buch. Chapter 33, Jackson, the Soldier and the Man. A poor brief record of a splendid career is finished. Would it be worthy, but one merit at least possess of the truth. Ja, hat ja schon gesagt, das ist ja Life of Stonewall Jackson. Orden und Fotos drinne. th of May 1940. Dear Peter, was it Samuel Johnson who are tired of London? You are Peter, if so then off. I am in London, noisy and chaotic, and I'm yet to meet a suitable body, though I have not a few. My are paying off on the tracks.
My bets?
Bots? Ich habe keine Ahnung. In the Rhodesian continue to keep me dining at the capital's best restaurants. Despite Paddock's sentimental insistence that dine at and his culinary skills and dine at home, that I should dine at home and try his culinary skills. One can always hope that they are better than his valet skills. No stone unturned. Cool, spielen jetzt Cluedo.
Sieht so aus.
There was no trace of Scudder's black book. Most likely the enemy had found it, but they had not found it on Scudder's body. I'd come to a decision. I must vanish somehow. Keep vanished till the end of the second week in June.
Da geht es dahin.
Then I must find a way to get in touch with the government people and tell them what Scudder had told me. Das ist ein ganz hübscher Aufbau. I wished to heaven he had told me more and that I had listened more carefully to what he told me. There was a big risk that even if I weathered the other dangers, I wouldn't be believed in the end. I must take my chance of that and hope that something might happen which would confirm my tale in the eyes of the government.
Der große.
My notion was to get off to some wild district where my Feldkraft would be of some use to me, for I would be like a trapped rat in a city. I considered that Scotland would be the best, for my people were Scotch and I could pass anywhere as an ordinary Scotsman. I fixed on Galloway the best place to go. It was the nearest wild part of Scotland, and from the look of the map, was not over thick with population. Always order Schweppes! How was I to make my way to St. Pancras train station? I was pretty certain that Scudder's friends would be watching for me outside. This puzzled me for a bit, then I had an inspiration, in which I went to bed and slept for 2 troublesome hours.
Schön, ich hatte eine Inspiration und dann bin ich erstmal schlafen gegangen.
Ja! Wir müssen erstmal darüber nachdenken, ob die Idee gut war, ja?
Die Radar-Methode. Ich habe eine Idee. Ich muss schlafen.
Waking up, I had a great revulsion of feeling and felt a god-forgotten fool. My inclination was to let things slide and trust the British police taking a reasonable view of my case. But as I reviewed the situation, I could find no argument to bring against my decision for a previous night. So with a wry mouth, I resolved to go on with my plan. I hunted out a well-used tweed suit, a pair of strong-nailed boots and a flannel shirt with a collar. Into my pockets I stuffed a spare shirt, a cloth cap, some handkerchiefs and a toothbrush. I took 50 pounds of it in sovereigns in a belt which I had brought back from Rhodesia. $50 sovereigns? Das ist eine Menge Geld, um es bar dabei zu haben. Das waren die größten Münzen. Now came the next step. Paddock used to arrive punctually at 7:30 and let himself in with a latchkey. But about 20 minutes to 7, as I knew from bitter experience, the milkman turned up with a great clatter of cans and deposited my share outside of my door. On him, I staked all my chances. I went into the darkened smoking room where I breakfasted off a whiskey and soda and some biscuits. Neben der Leiche, wie schön!
Bester Ausblick. Es gibt Leute, die kennen nix.
By this time I was getting on for 6 o'clock, but a pipe in my pocket. I put a pipe in my pocket and filled my pouch from the tobacco jar on the table by the fireplace. Information collected January to May 1914. It seemed a good omen.
Goodbye, old chap. I'm going to do my best for you. Wish me well, wherever you are.
I hung about the hall waiting for the milkman. I was fairly choking to get out of doors. Out of doors, ja, tatsächlich. Das war richtig. Es ist alles so britisch. The fool had chosen this day of all to be late. Wanted by the police for murder and by the real killers for knowing too much. My name must flee London. ...24. Mai, immer noch. Immer noch im selben Haus.
Hm.
Der Milchmann ist da. Milchmann.
Milch.
Milchmann.
Der Milchmann.
Wenn du das sagst, klingt das seltsam.
Ich kann das auch nicht so gut.
God, blimey.
Come in here a moment. I want a word with you.
Yes, sir?
Und der Arme. He was a young man about my own height, with an ill-nourished mustache and wearing a flat blue cap and white overalls.
I reckon you're a bit of a sportsman, and I want you to do me a service. Lend me your cap and overall for 10 minutes, and here's a sovereign for you.
His eyes opened at the sight of the gold, and he grinned broadly.
What's the game?
A bet. I haven't time to explain, but to win it, I've got to be a milkman for the next 10 minutes, and all you've got to do is to stay here till I come back. You'll be a bit late, but nobody will complain, and you'll have that quid for yourself.
Right. I ain't the man to spoil a bit of sport. Here's the rig, governor.
Der arme Milchmann.
Mhm.
Wearing his hat and overalls, I went whistling downstairs. Und wie schön, dass man in England alles damit erklären kann. Ich habe eine Wette laufen.
Ja.
At first I thought there was nobody in the street. Then I caught sight of a policeman 100 yards down and a loafer shuffling past on the other side. I crossed the street in character, whistling gaily and imitating the jaunty swing of the milkman. Wie oft hat er den schon beobachtet, dass er weiß, wie er läuft?
Jeden Tag.
Some impulse made me raise my eyes to the house opposite, and there at the first floor window was a face. As the loafer passed, he looked up, and I fancied a signal was exchanged. Then I looked the first side street. I took the first side street.
Er kann natürlich auch einfach nur gucken, ist auch kein Problem. Möchte dir da nicht reinreden.
There was no one in the alleyway, so I dropped the milk cans inside the hoarding and sent the cap and overall after them. I had only just put on my cloth cap when a postman came round the corner. I gave him a good morning. He answered me unsuspiciously. Then I took to my heels and ran. Ich hätte gerne die Karte. Könnte ich bei Enzai random Straßennamen benutzen, auch von so kleinen Straßen. Was Leute beeindrucken würde, aber sie würden es überlesen. Weil niemand interessiert, wie die kleinen Straßen heißen. I had no time to take a ticket. The porter told me the platform. I saw the train already in motion. 2 station officials blocked the way. I dodged them and clambered into the last carriage. I had made it. Die Fluchtszene hätte ich ungefähr genauso geschrieben. 3 minutes later, an irate guard interviewed me. He wrote out for me a ticket to Newton Stewart, a name which had suddenly come back to my memory. Then he conducted me from the first-class compartment to a third-class smoker. The compartment was occupied by a sailor and a stout woman with a child. Ich sehe weder die Frau noch das Kind noch den Seemann. Ah. Verkaufen sie wieder Klamotten. Diesmal sind es Damenklamotten. Weekend Paris.
Da ist
Hot
irgendwas sehr hell markiert. Ein
Empire Day, ja genau.
Das ist irgendwie seltsam.
Yesterday's parade of 6,000 in Hyde Park. The annual Empire Day Parade. Hier stimmt, irgendwas war mit dem Empire Day. In Hyde Park took place yesterday afternoon. Rain prevented the attendance of Lord Roberts, who had promised to take the salute, but in his place the Earl of received the salute from over 6,000 men and boys. Under the patronage of Prince Alexander of Teck and Princess Alexandra of Teck, was commanded by Lieutenant General Sir Henry H. Saddle, was witnessed by, among others, Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress, a number of the mayors and metropolitan boroughs, to Crown Prince of Johori, High Kasmalala, bla 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 bla. Es geht mir wie ihm. Der ganze politische Kram interessiert mich eigentlich gerade gar nicht.
Ja, aber ich glaube, es reicht doch nur das hell markierte.
Dass wir wissen, dass die Parade war, ja. Ich denke, was ich mir angucken wollte, war Obesity can be reduced without trucks or starvation. Take Kalari biscuits at each meal. Replace bread and toast. They are
Relatable?
nutritious, palpable, nutritious, harmless, and effectual. Analysis of apply for free sample. Ach ja, auch das gab es schon immer. Heute macht man Drinks daraus, weil die Leute dann eher glauben, wenn ich nichts esse, nehme ich auch ab.
Aber feine kleine Biscuits.
Ja, feine kleine Biscuits.
Nehme ich gern.
Mich interessiert eigentlich nur die Werbung in der alten Zeitung, der Rest ist mir egal. Haben wir noch einen. Fitted traveling cases. The company's traveling cases, dressing bags, are made in the finest leathers and fitted with requisites of gold, silver, tortoise shell, and ivory. They are examples of the exceptional value
Schon
obtained.
faszinierend, wie das jeder Buchstabe sein kann.
At Mappin and Webb's establishments. Illustrated is a lady's Morocco traveling case containing a set of sterling silver toilet requisites, cut glass jars, and plotter jewel cases, etc. Ich habe keine Ahnung, wie ich diese Zahl lesen soll. Für mich sieht es aus wie eine Telefonnummer.
Ja.
Lass uns mal 27100 Pfund wählen. Wir gucken, wo wir rauskommen. Das ist schon cool gemacht. Ja, ich denke, es ist halt mit dem,
Ja.
das speziell, also dass der Lord Roberts nicht da war, ist wahrscheinlich der wichtige Punkt. Ich frage mich, was die anderen Leute in dem Abteil denken von diesem Mann, der sich die ganze Zeit die Werbung anguckt. Interessante Mode. Gott, sieht das dumm aus, was sie anhat.
Dieser Hut.
Warum sind da Knöpfe unten an dem Kleid?
Keine Ahnung.
Es war schon eine wilde Zeit.
Schon.
Und dann kamen 2 Weltkriege und dann sieh dir an, wie die Leute heute rumlaufen. Ich würde gerne wissen, wenn man jetzt in den Klamotten in die Zeit zurückfallen würde, ob die Leute auch sagen würde, das sieht aber seltsam aus. Wie kann man sowas denn anziehen? Wie unbequem.
Stimmt.
Ah, jetzt ist da jemand.
It's a sailed job catching trains.
Aye, the impudence of that Geard. He needed a Scotch tongue to put him in his place. He was complaining of this way and no haying a ticket and her no fower till August 12th. And he was objecting to this gentleman spitting.
Ich habe kein Wort verstanden.
Ich muss auch, also ein bisschen.
Sie haben sich darüber aufgeregt, dass die Wachen versucht haben, ihn davon abzuhalten, in den Zug zu gehen. Ich gehe davon aus, die Frau ist auch Schottin.
Das kann sein, ja.
Was zur Hölle? Sehr schön. Das macht Stimmung. Geb ich zu.
Also die Sprecher sind super.
Ja. I had a solemn time traveling north that day. I asked myself why, when I was still a free man, had I stayed on in London and not got the good of this heavenly country. Ich war sehr irritiert davon, dass mein Handy behauptet hat, mein Datenvolumen wäre aufgebraucht. Then I got out Scudder's little pocketbook and studied it. Aber erst malen wir ein bisschen was. Hofgard 5,5. Sehr viele römische Zahlen. Ich frage mich, was das für ein Code ist.
Das fragt er sich wahrscheinlich auch.
4,5. Landwill 3,5. Dann Crossen 5,5. Kaviar 4,5. The writings. I was certain that Scudder never did anything without a reason, and I was pretty sure there was a cipher in all of this. I have a head for things like chess and puzzles, and I used to reckon myself pretty good at finding out ciphers. These set of figures look like they correspond to letters of the alphabet. I tried for hours, but none of the words answered. Ja, aber das könnte sein, wenn man rauskriegt, wo die Bruchzeilen zwischen den Zahlen sind. Royal Mail, West Coast Routine between England and Scotland. Oh mein Gott, so viel Farbe! I wakened up Dumfries just in time to bundle out on the crowded platform. There was a young man on the platform whose looks I didn't like, but he never glanced at me. I caught sight of myself in the mirror of an automatic machine, with my brown face, my old tweeds and my slouch. I was the very model of one of the hill farmers who were now crowding into the third-class carriages. I boarded the Galloway train, travelling with half a dozen in an atmosphere of shack and clay pipes. They had come from the weekly market and their mouths were full of prices. I heard accounts of how the lambing had gone up the Cairn and the Doge and a dozen other mysterious waters. Above half the men had lunched heavily and were highly flavored with whiskey, but they took no notice of me. About 5 o'clock, the carriage had emptied and I was left alone, as I had hoped. I got out at the next station. It reminded me of one of those forgotten little stations in the Karoo. An old station master with a spade over his shoulder sauntered to the train, took charge of a parcel and went back to his potatoes, while a child of 10 received my ticket.
Sieht so ganz nett aus.
Ja, nicht viel los. I was getting very hungry when I eventually come to a herd's cottage. A brown-faced woman greeted me with the kindly shyness of moorland places. When I asked for a night's lodging, she said I was welcome to the bed in the loft, and very soon she set before me a hearty meal of ham and eggs, scones, and thick, sweet milk. In the darkening, her man came in from the hills, a lean giant who in one step covered as much ground as 3 paces of ordinary mortals. They asked me no questions, for they had the perfect breeding of all dwellers in the wild. But I could see they set me down as a kind of dealer. I took some trouble to confirm the view. They refused any payment, and by 6 the next morning I had breakfasted and was striding southwards again. All the slackness of the past months was slipping from my bones, and I stepped out like a 4-year-old. My notion was to return to the railway line a station or 2 farther, and then the place where I had alighted yesterday, and to double back. I waited till I saw the smoke of an east-going train on the horizon. Then I approached the booking office and took a ticket for Dumfries. Ich musste jetzt tatsächlich eine Weile überlegen oder warten, weil ich darauf gewartet habe, ob noch ein Zug kommt, der nach Osten fährt, bevor mir eingefallen ist, wir gucken nach Süden, also ist Osten links. Sanctuary of the Inn. With a considerable distance between himself and his pursuers, Hannay makes his next move. »24. Mai, Galloway, Schottland. The occupants of the carriage were an old shepherd and his dog, a wall-eyed brute I mistrusted. The man was asleep, and on the cushions beside him was that morning's Scotsman. The Scotsman!
God.
Empire Day murder shocks London. Police questioning suspect. London, Sunday morning. Scotland Yard's top officers have been called into action following the brutal slaying of a decorated British officer in an affluent apartment block in London, near Portland Place. The killing took place during last week's Empire Day celebrations. The as yet unnamed man was discovered in the first floor flat on Saturday morning by its valet, Mr. Paddock. Intriguingly, the victim was not in charge of the apartment, and the owner was not to be found. Even more intriguing is the arrest of the local milkman, found whistling in the hallway of the apartment.
Hey.
A mere 5 minutes away from Oxford Street. Mr. Paddock sprang the alarm and had the young man arrested. Der Arme. Scotland Yard Commissioner Mr. McGillias
Wo bist du?
ah,
McGillias.
said his top officers were currently interviewing the suspect. This is one of the most horrendous murders we have had in this part of London for some time. The fact that it happened on Empire Day just makes the whole affair event even more abhorrent. We will make sure that no stone is left unturned in bringing the killer to justice. Mr. Paddock had informed the police that the dead man's name was Sir Captain Ditchby of the 40th Gurkhas, and he had been at the apartment for 4 days. As yet, Scotland Yard has been unable to confirm their identity. The details of the murder are also sparse. This is the second dead body to have been found in this very apartment block in the past week. Just 6 days earlier, an American businessman identified as Mr. Scott Canavan was found in his apartment, having committed suicide. Neighbor Miss Whitson said, "We've never seen anything like it. This is a respectable part of the city, safe behind closed doors, at least until now. I'm all shook up. I've cancelled my milk order."
Das ist die richtige Reaktion. Gillidas
assured residents that there is nothing to be concerned about, and that there are no apparent connections between the death and that the latest killing is most likely the result of a financial dispute.
Ich bin sehr geübt darin, mir Spitznamen
Ich
auszugeben.
merke das. Missing Airman, feared disaster to Mr. Hamel. Warships search English Channel. Mr. Gustav Hamel, a well-known aviator whose intentions to attempt transatlantic flight was announced last week, was expected in London on Saturday morning in order to take part on the aerial derby competition arranged for the afternoon. He was now known to have started from the aerodrome at Villa Cobley at in the morning, but he failed to put in an appearance on the English side of the channel. And as the day wore on, without bringing any defining news of him, considerable anxiety on his account gradually made himself felt. Suffragette outrages. Wie spricht man Suffragetten im Englischen aus? Picture demand
Ich weiß es nicht.
damaged at Royal Scottish Academy. King's portraits are slayed with an axe. The destruction of exhibition pictures, which has been recently a feature of the militant suffragists' activity in London, was adopted in Edinburgh for the first time on Saturday, when a half-length portrait of King George from the brush of Mr. John Lavery, RSA ARA, which was one of the outstanding exhibits, along with a picture of the Queen in Gallery 2, or Large Gallery, of the Royal Scottish Academy, was damaged by a woman who slashed it with an axe. In view of similar outrages, late special precautions had been taken to the Academy with the object of frustrating any attempts to destroy the paintings. But when the woman entered the building about noon, no suspicion at first was aroused, though it was remarked afterwards that she had not, as it's usually done by lady visitors, given an umbrella or article of attire into the keeping of their tenant.
Okay. So viele interessante Nachrichten.
Empire Day celebrations. Rain interferes with Hyde Park Parade. Rain marred the annual Empire Day parade in Hyde Park on Saturday afternoon and prevented the attendance of Lord Roberts, who had promised to take salute. Ja, das hatten wir schon. The Earl of Math, however, braved the storm and with bared head received the salute of over 6,000 men and boys, while most of the spectators fled. Fortunately, the storm did not break until towards the end of the march past, and the preliminary evolutions of the Great Master were watched with interest. Und dann haben wir noch was da hinten. Latest news! Portland Place killer on the run. Thought to be traveling north. Oh shit. New twists and turns in the case of the Portland Place murder as Scotland Yard releases its prime suspect and reveals that the true criminal has escaped the capital. Aber wie schön, dass das in derselben Zeitungsausgabe steht, wie das der Mord passiert ist. But Scotland Yard Commissioner Mr. was unwilling to elaborate on further details as to whom the murderer might be. We have reasons to believe the killer has left London by one of the northern lines. We no longer have reason to suspect that the milkman is a murderer or has any connection with the killing of Captain Theophilus Ditchby, found dead earlier this week. Captain Ditchby is reported to have been on home leave and staying with a friend in the apartment near London's affluent Portland Place apartments. Ich möchte sagen, Theophilus Ditchby klingt wie ein Australier. Chief Investigating Officer Mr. Scaife told the Times, "This was a brutal slaying of an honorable man. We urge anyone who may have seen or heard anything on the night of the 23rd of May come forward and make yourself known." The owner of the apartment in question, Mr. Richard Hannay, is still missing. Ich möchte aber sagen, wieso? Oh, das war ein ehrbarer Mann. Er war so ein hochdekorierter Offizier. Und es ist so schlimm, dass er ermordet worden ist, aber eigentlich kennen wir den Mann nicht. Der wird in keinem Militärregister geführt. Aber er muss sehr ehrbar sein. Er war ein Offizier in Indien.
So läuft das.
Das ist so ein bisschen wie bei Kleider machen Leute. Und hier ist irgendwie alles wichtig.
Kann ich mir nicht vorstellen.
Nein, das meiste sieht aus wie Werbung. Mall's sale of white begins today. Mary Nolan Underwear.
Das kannst du ja auch wieder schlecht lesen. Ich glaube, das ist einfach nur hell, weil...
Das ist die erste Seite.
Ja.
Warte mal, was ist der Showtext? Ah.
God.
Also wenn ich auf Showtext gehe, dann zeigt er mir auch nur den wichtigen Teil in den Texten an.
Na gut.
Nützlich. Schön, dass wir das auch rausgefunden haben, nachdem wir jetzt schon 3 Zeitungen gelesen haben. Wahrscheinlich hilft das auch bei den handschriftlichen Briefen.
Wahrscheinlich. Man lernt nie aus, ja, das ist wahr.
I could smell the alcohol on his breath. We were approaching the station at which I had got out yesterday. The potato digging station master had been gingered up into some activity, for the west-going train was waiting to let us pass. And from it descended 3 men who were asking him questions. Sitting well back in the shadow, I watched them carefully. I supposed that they were the local police who had been steered up by Scotland Yard and had traced me as far as this one-horse siding. One of them had a book and took down notes. The old potato digger seemed to have turned peevish. The child who had collected my ticket was talking volubly.
Da war ein Fragezeichen.
Ja, da war ein Fragezeichen. Es klingt wie Wallaby, aber ich glaube nicht, dass sie von einem Pokémon reden. Oder von einem kleinen Känguru.
Wütend.
Wütend? Ah, okay. All the party looked out across the moor where the white road departed. I hoped they were going to take up my tracks there.
Schon eigentlich raffiniert ist, in die eine Richtung zu fahren auf der Flucht und dann in die andere Richtung wieder.
As we moved away from the station, the old shepherd began to steer.
Der Hund weiß was.
Ja, der Hund ist gruselig.
Quiet, you Where am I? Oh, where am I?
You're on a train, travelling east towards Dumfries, in Scotland.
Oh, that's what comes of being a teetotaler.
I expressed my surprise that in him I should have met a blue ribbon stalwart.
Oh, I'm a strong teetotaler. I took the pledge last Martinmas and I haven't touched a drop of whiskey since then. Not even a Hogmanay, though I was sair tempted. That's what I get. I heat better than hellfire and twine looking different ways for the Sabbath.
What did it?
Here, a drink they call brandy. Being a teetotaler, I keep it off the whiskey, but I was nipping on there and brandy and I don't know me wheel for a fortnight.
Oh, da ist er wieder eingeschlafen.
So kann das gehen.
Ich möchte mal sagen, ich finde es schon schwer, den schottischen Akzent zu verstehen, aber einen angetrunkenen schottischen Akzent, so jedes 5. oder 6. Wort konnte man irgendwie mitkriegen.
So ungefähr.
Was ich mitgenommen habe, ist, er darf keinen Whisky trinken, deswegen hat er Brandy getrunken. Für die letzten 14 Tage. Respekt, Junge. My plan had been to get out at some station down the line, but the train suddenly gave me a better chance. I looked out and saw that every carriage window was closed and no human figure appeared in the landscape. So I dropped quickly from the carriage. I would have been all right, but for that infernal dog. Dieser Hund interessiert sich aber auch für alles, wie Konrad.
He's jumped. He's jumped to his death.
I could not have made a more public departure if I had left with a bugler and a brass band. Happily, the drunken shepherd provided diversion. He and his dog, which was attached by a rope to his waist, suddenly cascaded out of the carriage.
Und ist aber auch gut erzogen, Mann.
Das ist doch kein Schäfer, deswegen hat er wahrscheinlich keine Schafe.
Ja.
They had forgotten me. Aber Cascading ist so ein schönes englisches Wort, bei dem ich regelmäßig vermisse, dass wir im Deutschen keine Entsprechung dafür haben. I looked back, but there was nothing in the landscape. For the first time, I felt the terror of the hunted on me. It was not the police that I thought of, but the other folk who knew I knew Scudder's secret and dared not let me live. I was certain that they would pursue me with a keenness and vigilance unknown to the British law, and that once their grip closed on me, I should find no mercy. The mood did not leave me until I had reached the rim of mountain and flung myself painting on a ridge high above the young waters of the river. I have eyes like a hawk, but I could see nothing moving in the whole countryside. Then I looked into the blue May sky, and there I saw that which set my pulses racing. I was as certain as if I had been told that the aeroplane was looking for me, and that it did not belong to the police. These Heather's hills were no sort of cover, and my enemies were in the sky, and I must find a different kind of sanctuary. I kept onwards.
Das ist das Problem, wenn man irgendwie auf der Flucht ist oder so. Du denkst, alles ist hinter dir her. Alle gucken dich an. Du bist nirgends sicher.
About 6 in the evening, I came out of the moorland. Approach. As when a griffin thought the wilderness with winged step or ill on moory duck pursues.
When a griffin flew the wilderness with winged step. As when a griffin flew the wilderness with winged step o'er hill and moory dale pursues the Arimaspian.
So ungefähr hätte ich es auch gesagt. Peat smoke and savory roast floated from the house.
Good evening to you. It's a fine night for the road.
Is that place an inn?
At your service. I'm the landlord, sir. And I hope you will stay the night, for, to tell you the truth, I've had no company for a week.
Das liegt sehr weit ab, huh? I pulled myself up on the parapet of the bridge and filled my pipe. I began to detect an ally.
You're young to be an innkeeper?
My father died a year ago and left me the business. I live there with my grandmother. It's a slow job for a young man, and it wasn't my choice of profession.
Which was?
He actually blushed.
I want to write books.
And what better chance could you ask? Man, I've often thought that an innkeeper would make the best storyteller in the world.
Oh, not now. Maybe in the old days when you had pilgrims and ballad makers and highwaymen and mail coaches on the road. But not now. Nothing comes here but motor cars full of fat women who stop for lunch and a fisherman or two in the spring and the shooting tenants in August. There's not much material to be got out of that. I want to see life, to travel the world and write things like Kipling and Conrad. But the most I've done yet is to get some verses printed in Chambers' journal.
Immerhin. I looked at the inn standing golden in the sunset against the brown hills. Du möchtest jetzt nicht den armen Jungen so gerne oder nicht auch noch ins Verderben stürzen. Das ist schon den armen Milchmann.
I've knocked a bit about the world, and I wouldn't despise such a hermitage. Do you think that adventure is only found in the tropics or among gentry in red shirts? Maybe you're rubbing shoulders with it at this moment.
That's what Kipling says. Brother romance, and all unseen bromance brought up the 9:15.
Yes. There's a true tale for you then. And a month from now, you can make a novel out of it.
Ich finde es immer schön, wenn man Bücher hat, in denen die Entstehungsgeschichte des Buches als Teil der Story thematisiert wird. A story of epic proportions. Mr. Richard Hannay was a successful mining magnate from Kimberley, Australia. Then his luck changed and he ran into serious financial troubles. We're here for the money. I owe you nothing. Thugs chased Hannay across the Kalahari to German Africa, pursuing him across the ocean. He got away and fled to London.
Ist er vom Schiff gesprungen und geschwommen?
Wahrscheinlich. But they tracked him down. My head!
Der muss aber jedes Mal einen neuen Hut kaufen.
They had killed his friend and were chasing Hannay yet. Dabei sind Zylinder so teuer.
Mhm.
Diese Filmchen sind so süß.
Ja.
You're looking for adventure? Well, you found it here. The devils are after me and the police are after them. It's a race that I mean to win. By God! It's all pure Rider Haggard and Conan Doyle.
You believe me?
Of course I do. I believe everything out of the common. The only thing to distrust is the normal.
He was very young, but he was the man for my money.
I think they're off my track for the moment, but I must lie close for a couple of days. Can you take me in?
He caught my elbow with his eagerness and drew me towards the house. As I entered the inn porch, I heard from far off the beat of an engine. He gave me a room at the back of the house with a fine outlook over the plateau. I smoked in a chair till daylight, for I could not sleep. The next morning I wanted some time to myself, so I invented a job for him. He had a motor bicycle and I sent him off the next morning for the daily paper, which usually arrived with the post in the late afternoon. I told him to keep his eyes skinned and make note of any strange figures he saw, keeping a special sharp lookout for motors and aeroplanes. Then I sat down in real earnest to Scudder's notebook. Portland Place murder in Scotland. London police have reason to believe that the Portland Place murderer has travelled north into Scotland and has bid to escape the authorities. It has also come to light that the milkman has provided damning evidence against the flat's owner, Mr. Richard Hannay, in connection to the murder of Captain Theophilus Digby. He told me that he was playing a game, said the milkman. He needed to be a milkman for half an hour. Es waren 10 Minuten.
Ja.
And I believed him, but he never came back. He took my hat and coat to the thief. The milkman's uniform has since been discovered behind a hoarding in the alleyway opposite of Mr. Hannay's apartment. Fear not, if there is a killer in Scotland, we will track him down, said Lothian and Borders Police Chief Mr. Hamish Smith. Hamish Smith! We will be putting extra resources into this manhunt. Should anyone spot Mr. Hannay, a 37-year-old Mensorum of average height and build, they should not try and apprehend him. Hannay is known to be a military man with considerable skills with weaponry. Der Suffragettenteil ist nicht wichtig. Aber es trotzdem weiß.
Aber du hattest ja schon einen Text davon.
Ja, aber das ist jetzt auch... Ich hatte den Text davon, wie sie die Bilder kaputt gemacht hat. Jetzt geht es um ihre Gerichtsverhandlung. Attired in a navy blue costume with silk blouse, green scarf and a straw hat, Maud Edwards, the woman who was arrested in connection with a picture-damaging outrage at the Royal Scottish Academy, Edinburgh on Saturday, appeared before Bailey Douglas Elliot in Edinburgh City Police Court yesterday. She was charged with having, within the Royal Scottish Academy, maliciously, with a hatchet, broken the glass off and damaged the portrait of His Majesty King George V. The case was the first one called, and after the charge had been read, and without a plea being taken, the prosecutor asked for delay until today, bail being fixed at £20, at which amount he accused had been liberated on Saturday night. Accused left the court quietly along with a number of friends, including several women who take a prominent part in the suffragette campaign in Edinburgh. Miss Mary Richardson, suffragette who damaged the Rugby Venus at the National Gallery, was released from Holloway Jail yesterday afternoon on license under the provisions of the Cat and Mouse Act. For breaking 2 windows at Lord Northbrook's house in Portman Square, London, a woman who refused her name was sentenced to a month hard labor in Marylebone yesterday. Und die Tenant Gallery is closed.
Ja, es ist schon schön. Die Nebenhandlungen. Man davon auch viel mitkriegt.
Wobei die Frage ist, ich habe ja nachgeguckt, das Buch, zu dem das gehört. Ich glaube, da spielt eine Frau noch eine größere Rolle. Es kann sein, dass das damit vielleicht zusammenhängt.
Das kann sein.
The Albanian Revolt, Rebels release prisoners. Ich meine, ich verstehe auch immer noch nicht so ganz, was diese relativ genaue Darstellung der Geschehnisse auf dem Balkan, dem Nahen Osten tatsächlich damit zu tun hat. Weil bis jetzt klingt es ja nur so ein bisschen so, als müssten wir irgendwelche Rebellen davon abhalten, den griechischen Premierminister umzubringen.
Ja.
The insurgents have released all the prisoners. Prince William yesterday rode out to the outposts. Everything is now quiet here.
No.
Karolidis, the Greek premier. The state of the Balkans has become the most vexing issue on the international stage. Various failures to resolve the Eastern question over preceding decades have left Europe facing renewed crisis after crisis. Amidst this maelstrom, Greek Premier Minister Konstantin Karolidis is regarded as the key stabilizing force in a region beset by regime changes, rebellion and intractable territorial claims. Das ist der Part. Da muss man dann auch nicht den ganzen Text haben. Und das hatten sie auch. Okay. Das war die Zeitung. Schauen wir in den Schrank. Wow. Ein Schrank. Dear Mr. Fraser, thank you for sending our latest poem, A Frozen Heart in Summer Days. We would be delighted to publish your poem in the January issue of next year. We will return the manuscript once it has been copied by recorded post. Sincerely yours, Edward Layton, editor, Chambers Journal. A Frozen Heart in Summer Days. Last winter our chests were warm, as homely fires burned till dawn. The inn was full with a passing trade, a perfect home for a traveller's bait. The spring was pleasant and a new life did spring. We cooked up pheasant that my father brought in. But things did change as the sun arrived. But things did change as my father died. The place came empty, my thoughts then lost. The passing of life is the eternal cost.
Es hat nicht das Niveau von Asche zu Asche.
Nein. Now this summer our chests are cold, this inn's no longer the place of old. My heart is frozen like the eternal look on my father's face, and his life was took. But life goes on, but life goes on. I take over the business as my father's son. My dreams will hold, though ever gone. My words have meaning, my father's son.
Macht es nicht besser.
Nein, aber es ist ein schöneres Gedicht als Asche. Zu Asche.
Das ist wahr.
Zu Asche.
Aber es hat irgendwie nicht ganz dieses.
Es ist nicht so avantgardistisch.
Genau. Es ist so normal. Es hat nicht so viel Mut, auch mal was anderes zu machen, aus dem Gewohnten auszubrechen.
Ja.
Oder so.
So kann man das sagen. The hills of home. I was born in the land of Scotland, where the heather was turning brown. I grew in the hills of Scotland, then wanted to leave my town. I'm bored in the land of Scotland. Please take me away. These desolate plains of Scotland are not where I wish to stay. Das könnte man bestimmt gut vertonen.
Mhm. Musik von machen.
Ja.
Ein Song.
Chapter 1. What the innkeeper saw. Donald woke up to the sound of hammering. Thump, the hammer did strike. Thump, the hammer pierced his brain. Again and again. The beam above his head creaked as the wind whistled round the small cottage. He heard his grandmother moving about in the next room. His father would be at the river already, checking to see if the eggs had hatched. Dieses unveröffentlichte Stück Manuskript von einem kleinen Gasthauswirt irgendwo in der schottischen Pampa ist besser als alles, was ich in den letzten 3 Monaten gelesen habe.
Wow.
Und da waren Bücher dabei, die in einem Verlag erschienen sind. Okay. Ja. Aber zu sagen, dass es römische Zahlen sind, die Alphabetcoden, bringt auch nichts. Dafür sind die Zahlen zu groß. Wir haben da Hunderter und Tausender drinne. Und dann diese komischen 4/5, 3/5, 5/5 hinter den Ortsnamen.
Schon sehr seltsam.
I glanced out of the window. There seemed to be 2 of them, men in aquas scutums and tweed caps. Das musst du nicht nachgucken, wenn dein Fragezeichen war. Ich glaube, das ist ein Modebegriff. One was slim, the other was sleek, and that was the most I could make of my reconnaissance. Ich weiß, was das Wort bedeutet, ich weiß noch nicht, wie man das ausspricht. 10 minutes later, the innkeeper slipped into the room, his eyes bright with excitement.
There's 2 chaps below looking for you. They're in the dining room having whiskies and sodas. They asked about you and said they'd hoped to meet you here. Oh, and they described you jolly well, down to your boots and shirt. I told them you'd been here last night and gone off on a motorbicycle this morning. And one of the chaps swore like a navvy.
I made him tell me what they looked like. One was a dark-eyed, thin fellow with bushy eyebrows. The other was always smiling and lisped in his talk. Neither was any kind of foreigner. On this my young friend was positive. I took a bit of paper and wrote words in German as if they were part of a letter.
Take this down and say it was found in my bedroom and ask them to return it to me if they overtake me. Okay.
Schwarzer Stein. Das kann ich sogar lesen. Scudder war die Spur gekommen. Ihnen auf die Spur gekommen. Aber er konnte 14 Tage lang nichts tun. Ich bezweifle, dass ich noch etwas retten kann. Insbesondere, weil Kanolides sich seine Pläne nicht mehr sicher ist. Seiner Pläne nicht mehr sicher ist. Aber wenn Herr T. dazu rät, dann werde ich mein Bestes. Und ja, wenn ich nicht ganz sicher war, was da steht, habe ich kurz in den englischen Text geguckt.
Aha.
Ich lese jetzt den englischen Text nicht vor, weil ich habe den deutschen vorgelesen.
Your paper woke them up. The dark fellow went as white as death and cursed like blazes. And the fat one whistled and looked ugly. They paid for their drinks with half a sovereign and wouldn't wait for change.
Now, I'll tell you what I want you to do. Get on your bicycle and go off to Newton Stewart to the chief constable. Describe the two men and say you suspect them of having had something to do with the London murder. You can invent reasons. The two will come back, never fear. Not tonight, for they'll follow me 40 miles along the road, but first thing tomorrow morning. Tell the police to be here bright and early.
Gar nicht so dumm. He set off like a docile child, while I worked at Scudder's notes. I had a sudden inspiration. Dann hat er sich erst wieder 2 Stunden hingelegt.
Ja, erstmal wieder schlafen. So.
Scudder had said Julia's journey Chenyi. Könnten Sie das bitte in Kyrillisch schreiben? Dann wüsste ich, wie man es ausspricht. Was the key to Karolides' business, and it occurred to me to try it on his cipher. It worked. The 5 letters of Julia gave me the position of the vowels.
Ach je.
Chenyi gave me the numerals for the principal consonants. I scribbled that scheme on a bit of paper.
A ist X, B ist XX, C ist XXV.
Ich hoffe, wir müssen das nicht entziffern. Ich hoffe, das macht er für uns. In half an hour, I was reading with a whitish face and fingers that trumped on the table. Sudden inspiration. That evening we dined together. Out of common decency, I had to let him pump me for information. I gave him a lot of stuff about lion hunts and the Matabele War, thinking all the while what tame businesses these were compared to what I was engaged in. When he went to bed, I again sat up. I had finished Scudder's book. Was steht jetzt da drinne?
Das will er uns nicht sagen.
Also wirklich, das ist sehr gemein von ihm.
Werden wir nie erfahren.
Ich kriege nämlich langsam schon wieder Halsschmerzen. Ich würde so gerne weitermachen. Das ist ja schon doch recht anstrengend.
Aber wir sind weit gekommen. Wir müssen ja noch was lassen für die anderen Tage.
Ja, ich hatte gehofft, dass wir vielleicht bis hierhin kommen. Obwohl wir dann wahrscheinlich an einer Stelle in der Story sind, wo man auch nicht mehr aufhören wollen würde.
Ja.
Ich kann ein Lesezeichen setzen.
Ist das wie Speichern?
Ich weiß es nicht. Ich glaube, er speichert automatisch. Wir haben 7 von 19 Events, 21 von 25 Karten, 7 von 16 Reading Options, Original Text. Oh, no dialect. No sub... Nee. In Gälisch? Wow! Ich hoffe mit dem schottischen Dialekt nicht klar. Auf Gälisch kannst du es vergessen. Ich kann kein Gälisch. Aber geil, dass es die Möglichkeit gibt. Möchte ich mal so sagen.
Absolut, ja.
Digital adaptations are a new breed of interactive entertainment by the story mechanics, turning incredible works of literature into cinematic works of digital fiction. 39 Steps is the first of its type and based on the eponymous novel by John Bucker. Ich finde das Format voll geil.
Mhm. Und es ist schon schön, dass sie mit wenig Effekten eigentlich so viel machen können oder gemacht haben. Weil du hast ja eigentlich nur Hintergründe und Sound in den meisten Fällen. Und diese komischen weißen Umrisse.
Das ist Paddock.
Ah.
So hatte ich ihn mir nicht vorgestellt.
Ich auch nicht. Aber schön.
Skada habe ich mir auch nicht so vorgestellt.
Nee.
Ja, sie haben sich voll viel Mühe gegeben dabei.
Oh.
Ja.
Das ist wirklich ein kleiner Bubi.
Ich kann mir auch ein paar Notizen dazu ansehen. Schön süß. Okay. Also ich würde es definitiv geil finden, wenn es davon noch mehr geben würde. Speziell, wenn es halt auch solche Stories sind, weil die Story ist auch verdammt gut.
Ich kenne die Story nicht.
Ich kenne die Story auch nicht, aber bis hierhin, das ist verdammt gut.
Bis hierhin ist es verdammt gut, aber ich kenne das Original nicht, was dahinter
Nein,
steckt.
das kenne ich auch nicht. Aber ich würde es lesen und ich hätte auch voll Bock, mir die Hitchcock-Verfilmung anzusehen. Weil das klingt auch nach einer Art Story, die sich gut als eine Hitchcock-Verfilmung macht.
Schon, ja. Aber die wird nirgends gestreamt, oder?
Ich glaube nicht, kann gleich mal gucken. Aber dann würde ich tatsächlich an der Stelle der Stimme eine Pause geben. Es sei denn, du gehst runter und machst mir noch einen Tee. Vielleicht kann man damit noch ein bisschen über die Zeit retten.
Ich weiß nicht, ich möchte nicht, dass deine Stimme verloren geht. Da muss ich weitermachen. Musst du wissen. Meinst du, ein Tee kann es retten?
Ich glaube zumindest, ein Tee könnte es besser machen. Was sagt der Chat? Möchte der Chat noch ein bisschen weitermachen? Oh, mir fällt gerade was ein. Ich Tee sage, ich hatte doch extra.
Hast du sogar einen Bonbon eingepackt?
Ich hatte schon befürchtet, dass dieser Moment kommt, ja? Vielleicht können wir noch ein Kapitel weitermachen, so. Wenn es nicht stört, dass ich den Bonbon beim Sprechen im Mund habe.
Es ist schön, das nebenher als Hörbuch zu hören.
Das ist sehr schön. Selbst mit meinem schlechten Englisch.
Das ist besser als meins.
Dazu kann ich nichts sagen. Ich habe es dich noch nicht vorlesen hören.
Ich möchte das auch gar nicht vorlesen. Es sind so viele Wörter drin, die habe ich noch nie gehört. Das wird dann aussehen wie bei Final Fantasy. Ich würde es nur englischer versuchen, als ich versuche es irgendwie französisch zu machen.
Ich hätte gerne, dass du es mit einem schottischen Akzent machst.
Nee. Definitiv nein. Absolut no. Es wird schon peinlich, wenn wir Yakuza durchziehen. Das tut mir jetzt schon leid.
Having decoded Scudder's book, Hannah now has all the facts. If only he can remain hidden until the second week of June.
Obwohl ich es in Yakuza versuche irgendwie zu übersetzen. Grob. Ich glaube, das geht da besser, weil es ist schon ein bisschen weniger Text.
Ja, und es reicht auch für die Atmosphäre, wenn man den ungefähren Zusammenhang hat.
Ja.
So wie ich das beim Paten auch gemacht hätte.
Bei Yakuza ist es halt so, die Hauptstory ist wieder vertont. Ich glaube, komplett. Wenn ich es noch richtig im Kopf habe. Und all die Nebenquests sind halt, da muss man halt lesen. Die sind alle sehr witzig, sind sehr schön, die würde ich schon gerne mitnehmen, aber da reicht es eigentlich, wenn man so grob weiß, was da abgeht.
26. Mai. The Inn, Scotland.
Aber hier ist es, glaube ich, schon auch für die Atmosphäre eigentlich, wenn man die Texte genau hat.
Ja. The next morning I witnessed from my room the arrival of 2 constables and a sergeant. They put their chair in a coach house under the innkeeper's instructions and entered the house. Der car, nicht der chair. Sie sind nicht auf einem Stuhl angekommen.
Ich wollte gerade sagen, hä?
20 minutes later I saw from my window a second car come across the plateau from the opposite direction. It did not come up to the inn, but stopped 200 yards of the shelter of a patch of wood. I noticed that its occupants carefully reversed it before leaving it. My plan had been to lie hid in my bedroom and see what happened. I had a notion that if I could bring the police and my other more dangerous pursuers together, something might work out of it to my advantage. But now I had a better idea. Thank you. Flüchten wir jetzt aus dem Fenster.
Mhm.
Klauen das Auto von den...
Yep.
Das ist gut. I stole gently out onto the plateau. The wind seemed to bring me the sound of angry voices.
You may picture me driving that 40 HP car for all she was worth over the crisp moor roads on that shining May morning, glancing back at first over my shoulder and looking anxiously to the next turning, then driving with a vague eye just wide enough awake to keep on the highway, where I was thinking desperately of what I had found in Scudder's pocketbook. It was no question of preventing a war. That was coming, as sure as Christmas. Had been arranged, said Scudder, ever since February 1912. Carolides was going to be the occasion. This war was going to come as a mighty surprise to Britain. Carolides' death would set the Balkans by the ears, and then Vienna would chip in with an ultimatum. Russia wouldn't like that, and there would be high words, but Berlin would play the peacemaker and pour oil on the waters, till suddenly she would find a good cause for a quarrel, pick it up, and in 5 hours let fly at us. That was the idea, and a pretty good one too. The bare bones of the tale were all that was in the book. These, and one queer phrase which occurred half a dozen times inside brackets. 39 steps was the phrase, and at its last time of use it ran 39 steps. I counted them. High tide, 10:17 p.m. I could make nothing of that. The 15th day of June was going to be a day of destiny, a bigger destiny than the killing of a Dago. It was so big that I didn't blame Scudder for keeping me out of the game and wanting to play a lone hand. That, I was pretty clear, was his intention. Despite all the nonsense talked in Parliament, there was a real working alliance between France and Britain, and the two general staffs met every now and then and made plans for joint action in case of war. Well, in June, a very great swell was coming over from Paris, and he was going to get nothing less than a statement of the disposition of the British Home Fleet on mobilization. It was something uncommonly important. The whole story was in the notes, with gaps, you understand, which he would have filled up from his memory. He stuck down his authorities too, and had an odd trick of giving them all a numerical value and then striking a balance, which stood for the reliability of each stage in the yarn.
Das ist schon... In the Bearmore, I was at the aeroplane's mercy. My only chance was to get the leafy cover of the valley. Then came a thick wood where I slackened my speed. Suddenly I heard the hooting of another car and realized upon my horror that I was almost upon a couple of gate posts through which a private road debouched on the highway. I clapped on my brakes, but my impetus was too great. I did the only thing possible and ran slap into the hedge on the right. A branch of hawthorn had gotten me in the chest, lifted me up and held me, while a ton or two of expensive metal slipped below. Slowly that thorn let me go. As I scrambled to my feet and a hand took me by the arm, I found myself looking at a tall young man.
I say, bless me, I'm dreadfully sorry. Are you hurt? Really, I must apologize. Oh, bless my soul. Do tell me you're all right.
My blame, sir. It's lucky that I did not add homicide to my follies. Well, that's the end of my Scotch motor tour. Or it might have been the end of my life.
He plucked out a watch and studied it.
You're the right sort of fellow. I can spare a quarter of an hour, and my house is 2 minutes off. I'll see you clothed and fed and snug in bed. Where's your kit, by the way? Is it in the burn along with the car?
It's in my pocket.
A toothbrush?
I'm a colonial. Travel light.
A colonial? By gad, you're the very man I've been praying for. Are you by any blessed chance a free trader?
A free trader? I am.
Oh, good show.
He patted my shoulder and hurried me into his car. Presently, we drew up before a comfortable-looking shooting box, and he ushered me indoors. First, he flung half a dozen of his suits before me, for my own had been pretty well reduced to rags. I selected a loose blue serge with the different most conspicuously most conspicuously from my former garments, and borrowed a linen collar. Then he hailed me to the dining room.
Thank you. You find me in a deuce of a mess, Mr. By the by, you haven't told me your name.
Twisden.
Twisden? Any relation to old Tommy Twisden of the 60th? No? Oh well. Well, you see, I'm the Liberal candidate for this part of the world, and I had a meeting on tonight at Brattleburn, and that's my chief town, in an infernal Tory stronghold. I'd got the colonial ex-premier fellow, Crumpleton, coming to speak for me tonight, and had the thing tremendously billed and the whole place ground-baited. This afternoon, I had a wire from the ruffian saying he'd got influenza at Blackpool. And here I am, left to do the whole thing myself. I had meant to speak for 10 minutes, now must go on for 40. And though I've been racking my brains for 3 hours to think of something, I simply cannot last the course. Now you've got to be a good chap and help me. You're a free trader and can tell our people what a washout protection is in the colonies. All you fellows have the gift of the gab. I wish to heaven I had it. I'll be forever more in your debt.
I had very few notions about free trade, but I saw no other chance of getting what I wanted.
All right. I'm not much good as a speaker, but I'll tell them a bit about Australia.
Oh.
At my words, the cares of the ages slipped from his shoulders. Sir Harry, he lent me big driving coat and never troubled to ask why I had started on a motor tour without possessing an Ulster. Ich glaube, ich mag Sir Harry. As we slipped down the dusty roads, the young man poured into my ears the simple facts of his history. Sir Harry was orphaned at an early age and was brought up by his uncle, who is a member of the British cabinet.
Irgendwie sieht das Kind aus, als hätte es keinen Hals.
Es trägt ja auch irgendwie eine Pelzjacke für Erwachsene.
Ja, aber es wirkt so seltsam.
Das sieht aus wie Photoshop.
Ja. Als hätte man einen erwachsenen Kopf auf so einen Kinderkörper gesetzt, ohne den Hals vergessen. Irgendwie so. Aber niedlich.
Aber es ist bestimmt sehr warm da drin.
Ja. So einen dicken Mantel.
He had gone around the world after leaving Cambridge, and then, being sort of a job, his uncle had advised politics. Short. But he had no preference in parties. He was liberal because his family had always been Whigs. His uncle pulled a few strings and posted Harry in Tweeddale als the Liberal Candidate. Ich wollte erst Tweedaddle sagen, aber das klingt wie Alice im Wunderland. Without any hope of him winning over his conservative constituents. He knew about horses and jawed away about the Derby entries, and he was full of plans for improving his shooting. Das ist ein witziges Bild. Was macht dieses Pferd da und das da?
Also wenn die versuchen, über das Hindernis zu springen...
Das da schafft es nicht mehr.
Nein, das schafft es nicht mehr.
Es sei denn, es läuft jetzt wie so ein Gepard, setzt hier die Beine auf und holt die Hinterbeine ganz weit nach vorne, dass es damit über die Hürde geht.
Auf jeden Fall.
Aber ich glaube, so funktionieren Pferde nicht. Altogether, a very clean, decent, callow young man. Sir Harry's pickle turns out to Henny's advantage as he makes friends in high places.
Wir sind auf der Flucht, aber wir machen überall Freunde.
Ja, the radical candidate.
So muss man das machen.
Masonic Hall, Brattlebone, 26. Mai 1914. The hall had about 500 in it, women mostly, a lot of bald heads, and a dozen or two young men. The chairman was a withly minister with a reddish nose.
Ich hätte das Weasley gelesen.
Ja, ich auch. Wahrscheinlich heißt es auch Weasley. He lamented on Crumpleton's absence, soliloquized on his influenza, and gave me a certificate as a trusted leader of Australian thought. There were 2 policemen at the door, and I hoped they took note of the testimonial. Then Sir Harry started. He had about a bushel of notes from which he read, and when he let go of them, he fell into one prolonged stutter. Every now and then he remembered a phrase he had learned by heart, straightened his back, and gave it off like Henry Irving. The next moment he was bent double and crooning over his papers. He talked about the German menace and said it was all a Tory invention to cheat the poor out of their rights and keep back the great flood of social reform, but that organized labor realized this and laughed at the Tories to scorn. He was all for reducing our navy as a proof of our good faith and then sending Germany an ultimatum, telling her to do the same or we would knock her into a cocked hat. He said that, but for the Tories, Germany and Britain would be fellow workers in peace and reform. I thought of the little black book in my pocket. A giddy lot of Scudder's friends cared for peace and reform. In a queer way, I liked the speech. You could see the niceness of the chap shining out behind the mug with which he had been spoon-fed. I might be much of an orator, but I was 1,000% better than Sir Harry. I simply told them all I could remember about Australia, all about its Labour Party and emigration and universal service, praying there should be no Australian there. I doubt if I remembered to mention free trade, but I said there were no Tories in Australia, only Labour and Liberals. And I started in to tell them the kind of glorious business I thought could be made out of the empire if we really put our backs into it. Altogether, I fancy I was rather a success. So, wird gleich gewählt.
Ja.
The minister didn't like me though.
I'd like to propose a vote of thanks to Sir Harry for his statesman-like speech, and to Mr. Twisden, whose words had the eloquence of an emigration agent.
A ripping speech, Twisden. Now, you're coming home with me. I'm all alone, and if you'll stop a day or two, I'll show you some very decent fishing.
Hat ihn gleich schon adoptiert.
Ja. Back at Sir Harry's, we had a hot supper and then drank grog. The time had come for me to put my cards on the table. I saw by this man's eye that he was the kind you can trust.
Listen, Sir Harry. I've something pretty important to say to you. You're a good fellow, and I'm going to be frank. Where on earth did you get that poisonous rubbish you talked tonight?
Was it as bad as that? It did sound rather thin. I got most of it out of the Progressive magazine, and pamphlets that agent chap of mine keeps sending me. But you surely don't think Germany would ever go to war with us?
Ask that question in 6 weeks, and it won't need an answer. If you'll give me your attention for half an hour, I'm going to tell you a story.
I blinked no detail.
So you see, you have got here in your house the man that is wanted for the Portland Place murder. Your duty is to send your car for the police and give me up. I don't think I'll get very far. There'll be an accident, and I'll have a knife in my ribs an hour or so after arrest. Nevertheless, it's your duty as a law-abiding citizen. Perhaps in a month's time you'll be sorry, but you have no cause to think of that.
He was looking at me with bright, steady eyes.
What was your job in Rhodesia, Mr. Hannay?
Mining engineer. I've made my pile cleanly, and I've had a good time in the making of it.
Not the profession that weakens the nerves, is it?
As to that, my nerves are good enough.
I took the hunting knife and did the old Mashona trick of tossing it in the air and catching it by my lips.
I don't want proof. I may be an ass on the platform, but I can size up a man. You're no murderer, and you're no fool. I believe you're speaking the truth. I'm going to back you up. Now, what can I do?
First, I want you to write a letter to your uncle. I've got to get in touch with the government people sometime before the 15th of June.
He pulled his mustache.
That won't help you. This is Foreign Office business, and my uncle would have nothing to do with it. Besides, you'd never convince him. No. I'll go one better. I'll write to the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office. He's my godfather and one of the best going. Now, what do you want?
He sat down at a table and wrote to my dictation. Dear Walter, I hope this letter finds you well, and I must apologize for not being in touch for such a long while. I'm finding all my time taken up with this political business, even to the detriment of my fishing. Anyway, on to more important matters. Without sounding overly enigmatic, I'm writing to say that if a man called Twisden happens to make your acquaintance before the 15th of June this year, it would be to your benefit to treat him kindly, despite what he may look like. This Twisden chap will prove his bona fides, wenn ich es Englisch ausspreche, was mir echt bona fides. Passing the words Blackstone and whistling Annie Laurie. Listen carefully to him, dear uncle. He has something to say that might just wake you up. Cheerio and happy hunting, Harry. Cheerio, Miss Sophie.
Ja, musste ich auch dran denken.
Good.
Aber ich dachte,
That's
sag
the
mir
proper
nichts.
style. Oh, by the way, you'll find my godfather, his name's Sir Walter Bullivant, down at his country cottage for Whitsuntide. It's close to Artonswell on the Kent.
Whitsuntide?
And that's done. Now, what's the next thing?
You're about my height. Lend me the oldest tweed suit you've got. Anything will do, so long as the colour is the opposite of the clothes I destroyed this afternoon. Then, show me a map of the neighbourhood and explain to me the lie of the land. Lastly, if the police come seeking me, just show them the car in the glen. If the other lot turn up, tell them I caught the South Express after your meeting.
He did, or promised to do, all these things. I shaved off the remnants of my mustache and got inside an ancient suit of what I believe is called heather mixture. The map gave me some notion of my whereabouts and told me the two things I wanted to know: where the main railway to the south could be joined, and what were the wildest districts near at hand. He wakened me from my slumbers in the smoking room armchair and led me blinking into the dark, starry night. An old bicycle was found in a tool shed and handed over to me.
First, turn to the right, up by the long fir wood. By daybreak, you'll be well into the hills. Then, I should pitch the machine into a bog and take to the moors on foot. You can put in a week among the shepherds and be as safe as if you were in New Guinea.
Thank you.
Think nothing of it. You got me out of a tight spot last night. Now, you better get cracking. Good luck.
I pedaled diligently up steep roads of hill gravel till the skies grew pale with morning. Hannah must lie down, but the Scottish police are pursuing him with an advantage on their home turf. Und ich möchte sagen, Schottland sieht echt hübsch aus.
Ja.
Peopleshire, Scotland, 27. Mai. I sat down and took stock of my position. I realized that my vantage ground might be in reality a trap. There was no cover for Tomtit and those bald green places. My enemies had located me, and the next thing would be a cordon round me. I didn't know what force they could command, but I was certain it could be sufficient. The aeroplane had seen my bicycle and would conclude that I would try to escape by road. There might be a chance on the moors to the right or left. Ja, spring ins Moor. Then I climbed to a knoll which gave me a view of the two valleys. At other times I would have liked the place, but now it seemed to suffocate me. The free moorlands were prison walls, and the keen hill air was the breath of a dungeon. I tossed a coin. Head, right, tails, left. Then I found the roadman.
Good day to you.
He looked at me with a fishy eye.
Confound the day I ever left the herding. There I was, my own master. Now I'm a slave to the government, tethered to the roadside with sair een in a back like a suckle.
Ganz genau.
Vielleicht hätte ich doch Dialekt ausstellen sollen, dann würden wir ein bisschen mehr verstehen von dem, was die Schotten sagen.
Aber das macht Atmosphäre.
Das macht definitiv Atmosphäre, aber es ist auch sehr anstrengend, dem Text zu folgen. Ich hoffe, er ist nicht so wichtig.
Hallo, hallo.
Hi. Ja, ich habe ein bisschen Halsschmerzen, aber ansonsten geht es.
Du strengst dich ja auch an.
He was a wild figure, about my size, but much bent, with a weak beard on his chin and a big pair of horn spectacles. The plight of the roadmender was a difficult one. Breaking up stones and laying them across miles of Scottish tracks was a tough job indeed.
Oh, mercy on me, my head's bursting. I can't do it. The surveyor man just report me. I'm for my bed.
What is your trouble, may I ask?
His trouble was clear enough.
The trouble is that I'm no sober. Last night my daughter Maren was wadded, and the dance still four on the byre. Me and some other chills sat down to the drinking, and here I am. Pity that I ever look at on the wine when it was red.
Sleep sounds like your best bet.
It's easy speaking. But I got a postcard yestreen saying that the new road surveyor would be round the day. He'll come and he'll no find me, or else he'll find me foo, and either way I'm a done man. I'll walk back to my bed and say I'm no wheel, but I doubt that'll no help me, for they ken my kind of no wheelness.
Then I had an inspiration.
Und er hat sich wieder hingelegt für 2 Stunden.
Ja, wie sich
Where's
das
your
gehört.
house?
I was directed by a wavering finger to the cottage by the
Well,
stream.
back to your bed and sleep in peace. I'll take on your job for a bit and see the surveyor.
He stared at me blankly, then, as the notion dawned in his fuddled brain, his face broke into the vacant drunkard smile.
Eh? Oh, hey, you're the Billy. It'll be easy enough managed. I've finished that bingo stains, so you needn't chop any more for noon. Just take the barry and wheel enough metal for your own quarry down the road to make another bing in the morn. My name's Alexander Turnbull, and I've been 7 years at the trade, and 20 afore that herding in Leith and Water. My friends call me Eki, and Wales Specky, for I wear glasses in wake of the sight. Just you speak the surveyor fair and calm, sir, and he'll be well pleased. I'll be back, midday.
Ich hoffe, er ist bis dahin nüchtern, ne? I borrowed his spectacles and filthy old hat, stripped off coat, waistcoat and collar, and gave him them to carry home. I borrowed, too, the foul stump of clay pipe as an extra property. He indicated my simple tasks, and without more ado, set off to amble bedwards. And then I set to work to dress for the part. I opened the collar of my shirt. It was a vulgar blue and white check, such as plowmen wear, and revealed a neck as brown as any tinker's. I rubbed a good deal of dirt also into the sunburn of my cheeks. My boots did not satisfy me, but by dint of kicking among the stones I reduced them to the granite-like surface which marks a roadman's footgear. I broke one of the bootlaces and retied it in a clumsy knot, and loosed the other so that my thick grey thocks bulged over the uppers. I bit and scraped my fingernails till the edges were all cracked and uneven. The man I was matched against would miss no detail. I rolled up my sleeves, and there was a forearm which might have been a blacksmith, sunburned and rough with old scars. A roadman's eyes would no doubt be a little inflamed, so I contrived to get some dust in both of mine, and by dint of vigorous rubbing produced a bleary effect. The sandwiches Sir Harry had given me had gone off with my coat, but the roadman's lunch, tied up in a red handkerchief, was at my disposal. I tied up the bundle again and put the paper conspicuously beside it. On I went, trundling my loads of stone with the heavy step of the professional. Soon I grew warm, and the dust on my face changed into solid and abiding grit.
Are you Alexander Turnbull? I am the new County Road Surveyor. You live at Black Hopefoot and have charge of the section from Laidlaw Byres to the Riggs. Good. A fair bit of road, Turnbull, and not badly engineered. A little soft about a mile off and the edges want cleaning. See you look after that. Good morning. You'll know me the next time you see me.
Glaube nicht. Clearly my getup was good enough for the dreaded surveyor. Machen wir noch eins?
Musst du wissen.
Machen wir noch eins. As a bespectacled roadman, Hannay comes face to face with his enemies in a grueling battle of wits. Ja, das klingt, als könnte man das noch machen.
Sure.
Roadside Deception. Immer noch derselbe Ort und derselbe Tag. Just about midday, a big car stole down the hill, glided past, and drew up 100 yards beyond. Its 3 occupants descended as if to stretch their legs and sauntered towards me. 2 of the men I had seen before from the window of Galloway Inn, one lean, sharp, and dark, the other comfortable and smiling. The third had the look of the countryman, a wet perhaps, or a small farmer. He was dressed in ill-cut knickerbockers, and the eye in his head was bright and merry as a hen's. Bright and merry as a hen's?
Morning! That's a fine, easy job of yours.
Oh mein Gott. Ich kann ihn jetzt schon nicht leiden. Die Henne.
Lieb.
I slowly and painfully straightened my back after the roadman, spat vigorously after the men of the low Scot, and regarded them steadily before replying.
There's world jobs, and there's better. I would rather have yours, sitting all day on your hinterlands in 8 cushions. It's you and your muckle cars that wreck my roads. If we all had our richts, you should be made to mend what you break.
The bright-eyed man was looking at the newspaper lying beside Turnbull's
I
bundle.
see you get your papers in good time.
Aye, in good time. Seeing that paper come out last Saturday, I'm just 6 days late.
He picked it up, glanced at the superscription, and laid it down again.
You've a fine taste in boots. These were never made by a country shoemaker.
They were not. They were made in London. I got they through the gentleman that was here last year for the shooting. What was his name now?
I scratched a forgetful head.
Let us get on. This fellow is all right. Let us get on. This fellow is all right.
Did you see anyone pass early this morning? He might be on a bicycle or he might be on foot.
Der eine von den beiden ist Deutscher. Ich meine, das ergibt Sinn, dass es ein Engländer, ein Deutscher und wahrscheinlich ein Russe sind.
Ja.
Aber das ist witzig. Entschuldigung, dass sie sich sogar damit Mühe gegeben haben. I very nearly fell into the trap and told the story of a bicyclist hurrying past the grey dawn.
Wasn't up very early. You see, my daughter was married last night, and we keeping it up late. I opened the house door about 7, and there was nobody on the road then. Since I come up here, there has just been the baker and the Rackhill herd, besides you gentlemen.
One of them gave me a cigar, which I smelled gingerly and stuck in Turnbull's bundle. They were out of sight in 3 minutes, and my heart leaped with an enormous relief. I went on to wheeling my stones. Ich hoffe, sie halten jetzt nicht den Aufseher für uns. Ich habe das Gefühl, er bringt alle Leute in Schwierigkeiten, die er trifft.
Ja.
It was well, for 10 minutes later the car returned, one of the occupants waving a hand to me. It was Gentry left nothing to chance. I finished Turnbull's bread and cheese, and pretty soon I had finished the stones. The next step was what puzzled me. I had a notion that the cordon was still tied round the clan, and that if I walked in any direction I should meet with questioners. Get out I must. No man's nerve could stand more than a day of being spied on. Then, suddenly...
Excuse me, may I trouble you for a light?
By an amazing chance, I knew him. His name was Marmaduke Jopley, and he was an offense to creation. He was a sort of blood stockbroker who did his business by toe-dyeing eldest sons and rich young peers and foolish old ladies. He would crawl a mile on his belly to anything that had a title or a million. I had a business introduction with him, with his firm, when I came to London, and he was good enough to ask me to dinner at his club. There he showed off a great raid and pattered about his duchesses with all the snobbery of the creature turned me sick. I asked the man afterwards why nobody kicked him, and was told that Englishmen reverenced the weaker sex. Anyhow, There he was now, nettily dressed in a fine new car, obviously on his way to visit some of his smart friends. And he hadn't a clue who I was.
Hello, Jopley. Well met, my lad.
Who the devil are you?
My name's Hanny, from Rhodesia. You remember?
Good God, the murderer!
Just so. And there'll be a second murder, my dear, if you don't do as I tell you. Give me that coat of yours, that cap too.
He did his bit, for he was blind with terror. Over my dirty trousers and vulgar shirt I put on a smart driving coat, which buttoned high to the top and thereby hid the deficiencies of my collar. I stuck the cap on my head and added his gloves to my get-up. The dusty roadman in a minute was transformed into one of the neatest motorists in Scotland. On Mr. Jopley's head I clapped Turnbull's unspeakable hat and told him to keep it there.
Now, my child, sit quite still and be a good boy. I mean you no harm. I'm only borrowing your car for an hour or two. But if you play me any tricks, and above all, if you open your mouth, as sure as there's a God above me, I'll wring your neck. Tommy?
Just don't hurt me.
I enjoyed that evening's ride.
Ja, definitiv.
As the dark fell, I turned up a side clan into an unfrequented corner of the hills. Soon the villages were left behind, and then the farms, and then even the wayside cottage. Here we stopped, and I obligingly reversed the car and restored to Mr. Jopley his belongings.
1,000 thanks. There's more use in you than I thought. Now be off and find the police.
I'll get you!
Was für ein Loser.
Yeah. As I sat on the hillside, I reflected on the various kinds of crime I had now sampled. Contrary to general belief, I was not a murderer, but I had become an unholy liar, a shameless imposter, and a highwayman with a marked taste for expensive motor cars.
Warum nicht?
Yo!
Jetzt sind wir doch noch ein gutes Stück vorangekommen.
Ja.